Welcome everybody to Tropical Weather Update. It is September the 17th at about 5:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and this update is specifically for Tropical Storm Fiona, which is now headed directly toward Puerto Rico and very close to the U.S. Virgin Islands. We did an update about 2 days ago when this was a tropical depression and predicted that it may become a hurricane before it gets to Puerto Rico. Even though the National Hurricane Center didn't predict that, I said it's better safe than sorry, and that's looking more likely the case. If you look at the map that we're looking at right here, as you can see, there are hurricane warnings in effect in the red shaded areas for the entire island of Puerto Rico, because they expect by the time the storm gets to Puerto Rico, it may have hurricane force winds. You can't really see it very well, but in the blue areas are the tropical storm warnings that include the U.S. Virgin Islands and most of the east coast of the Dominican Republic. But under that is a pink shade right here that looks like that. And you can see it if you really look closely on here. Those are hurricane watches. So even though hurricane warnings are not yet in effect, I'm trying to erase this here, for the Dominican Republic, they may be necessary at some point in time if this storm does strengthen. So right now the Dominican Republic has tropical storm warnings and a hurricane watch in effect. If you look at this graphic, you'll see the center of the storm is located at latitude 16.7 north, longitude 64.6 west if you're tracking. Maximum winds are 60 miles an hour, and the movement is to the west-northwest at 9 miles per hour. Let's take a look now at the satellite image here. This is a current satellite loop infrared from the Caribbean Sea. And if you look closely here, you can see the center of the circulation. It is getting more defined right around there, and you'll see it'll form right into there. But we still do not have a very organized storm. The storm has most of the convection far to the east, and there's not much convection to the west. And that's because over the past few days there's been shear in the Gulf of Mexico that has prevented the storm from developing, and it's pushing all the convective activity off to the east of the storm. Well, now as you can see, I'm not going to go into all the details. If you go to like tropicaltidbits.com, Levi Cowan, a meteorologist, he has a video that explains the nature of the upper atmosphere and how the shear was affecting the storm, but is predicted to decrease so that the storm will have a better chance of organizing, so that the convective storm activity can wrap around the center, making it into a more symmetrical storm and therefore more organized, more likely to strengthen. And he said that is the atmosphere is more conducive for strengthening because of the decrease in the shear in the upper atmosphere in the next few days. Hence, that's why the National Hurricane Center has issued hurricane watches. And on the graphic that we looked at before, you can see they have it listed as a hurricane once it gets to Puerto Rico. That's what the H in the black circle means. Right now, it's a tropical storm with 60-mile-an-hour winds and about 1,002 millibars of pressure, but at 29.59 inches of mercury. But they expect that it will strengthen into a hurricane. So if you were in Puerto Rico, the weather conditions are probably already deteriorating. You need to make your preparations and finish your preparations now and expect a hurricane by, and they have it here, 2 p.m. Sunday. So that's tomorrow afternoon. The center of the storm will arrive. And most of the worst of the storm is to the east of the storm and to the north. So right now you probably still have some opportunity to get your preparations complete before the significant rainfall and wind hit the island. And based on, and you'll see it scrolling on the bottom of the screen, the major threat that they believe from this storm may be mudslides and flooding, because it's not moving that quickly, and there's a lot of rainfall to the east of this storm that will be wrapping around, and it may hang around for a few days, creating a flooding situation and a significant wind event, but not anything like Hurricane Maria, which had 160-mile-an-hour winds. This is going to be at max 75-mile-an-hour winds when this storm arrives, which is still hurricane force, but it'll be minimal Category 1 hurricane force winds, but there will be significant rainfall and therefore chance of flooding. But again, let's go to the satellite. This is a little closer view. Again, we don't have an eye. We don't even have a complete circulation. I mean, you can see that the circulation has not closed in, so it's not a closed circulation. But that could change over the next day or so before the center of the storm reaches Puerto Rico. And according to, and I'm going to show you this, this is the discussion from the National Hurricane Center where you kind of get the secret information that they don't put in the public advisory. If you read this, it does say Fiona's structure appears to be improving. Visible satellite images show an elongated band of deep convection wrapping around the center. And Doppler radar from San Juan, Puerto Rico suggests that a better defined center of circulation has developed. So, and the pressure is down to 1,002 millibars. Let's see what else, what other good information can we get from this discussion? The track guidance is pretty clear, and we're going to go over that. I just want to look at the strength forecast. The window for strengthening is less than it was earlier today because the new track forecast has the center of Fiona reaching Puerto Rico in about 24 hours. However, the National Hurricane Center intensity forecast still suggests that Fiona will be at or near hurricane intensity before moving across Puerto Rico on Sunday. If the center does cross Puerto Rico, that could halt intensification or cause some slight weakening, but Fiona is expected to go through a more significant strengthening phase once it's over the western Atlantic. The forecast shows Fiona just below major hurricane intensity by day 5, although it should be mentioned this prediction is slightly below the consensus aids. So this storm will become a hurricane once it moves into the Atlantic past Puerto Rico, although it'll probably be a minimal hurricane when it gets to Puerto Rico. And so then the issue is, well, where's it going next? Because if this becomes a major hurricane in the southeast, the Bahamas, Florida, and the southeast coast of the Atlantic of the United States are in its path, preparations should be starting to be made now. But fortunately, that does not look like the case. So this is from tropicaltidbits.com. Great website. I give credit to this in the comments to the video or to the description of the video. These are the major hurricane models, and they are all in agreement that the storm may affect the very, very eastern Bahamas, but it is not forecast to head toward the continental United States and really is a threat more for Bermuda as it curves out into the Atlantic Ocean. Let's look at a few more models. These are the GEPS models or ensembles, and you can see almost all of them, although they move around a little bit more, the general consensus is the same as the last set of models, that it will move north away from the Bahamas, away from the southeast coast of the United States, graze the eastern Bahamas, and move out into the Atlantic and come nowhere near the east coast of the United States. Here are the GEFS tracks ensemble models, and this also, again, shows even more agreement. You see a couple outliers that bring it toward Florida, but that's if the storm were to completely be destroyed by mountains or just completely weaken, which is not going to happen. Then all bets are off. A weak storm does not rise so high into the atmosphere, so it can't be steered by the upper level steering currents. But a strong storm has a higher cloud top, and therefore it's more likely, or it's more affected by the upper level steering currents, which are all in agreement are going to push this storm out to sea. So if it were to drift toward Florida, that would mean it dissipated essentially, and it's just a bunch of clouds that cannot be steered by the upper level steering currents. And then I always like this little South Florida Water Management District graphic, which is showing the same models that we just looked at from Tropical Tidbits, but it also confirms that all the model guidance has this storm staying off the coast of the United States and away from Florida. So that's great news, because I do believe this is going to become a major hurricane, a Category 3 or even 4 hurricane in the middle of the Atlantic. And interest in Bermuda should keep a very close eye on this storm. But for now, the United States is in great shape. But again, this is early. I mean, we're talking 5 days from now until it reaches way north of the Dominican Republic, uh, to the point where it strengthens, and models do change. So we want to keep an eye on this. But for right now, similar to 2 or 3 days ago when I did my last video, the consensus is that the storm is going to move north once it passes Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. Anyway, this is the latest tropical weather update on Tropical Storm Fiona. There's nothing else really of interest in the Atlantic, Caribbean Sea, and Gulf of Mexico to discuss, so we'll stick with this. Thank you for tuning in. If you're in Puerto Rico, obviously, you should be nearing completion of your preparations for this storm. If you're in the U.S. Virgin Islands, same thing, or in the eastern portions of the Dominican Republic, prepare as if a hurricane is coming. It's going to be a lot of flooding, a lot of rain, and a minimal hurricane force winds, possibly 75-mile-an-hour winds that you'll have to deal with in the next day or so. Thank you for tuning in. Stay weather aware, and we'll be back as warranted once the storm moves past Puerto Rico, or if there's any significant changes prior to it reaching Puerto Rico. Thank you very much, and have a great day.